Let me share with you a story from Phil Maynard's book. The book is called Shift. It's a familiar story lived out in many congregations across the U.S. Someone is in crisis. A couple has their first child, or a family moves to the area, and they decide to attend the church down the street. They don't know anyone, so they arrive late and slip into the back row of seats. Because the bulletin is geared to the congregation, they struggle to keep up with what is going on. During moments of friendliness, a few people nod at them, but most of the congregation visits with each other. After the service, someone points them in the direction of the fellowship hall where there is coffee, but then leaves them. When they go, they end up standing there on their own. It would be no different if they attended a small group or Sunday school class. The people in the church have known each other so long that it would be difficult to break in. They don't know the stories, the history, the people. You know, it is easy to forget what it feels like to be a stranger in a new place. But that is nothing compared to the challenge for a new person of navigating through an unfamiliar network of people and relationships. I'm sure you've been there when you have first visited a church or this church. Anyone trying to do that will certainly feel like an alien and a stranger and an outsider, unless we make them feel welcomed and wanted and clued in to what's going on. You know, what a difference that makes. If you think back, someone probably did that for you once. And probably that's why you stay here. Now, I'm assuming that you are doing the same for others, or you can do it for someone else. That is hospitality. Hospitality. Hospitality, according to the Webster Dictionary, is defined as generous and friendly treatment of visitors and guests. And Christian hospitality refers to the active desire to invite, welcome, receive, and care for those who are strangers so that they find a spiritual home and discover for themselves the unending richness of life in Christ. While hospitality in our culture has taken the form of fellowship, entertaining, where we would welcome friends to our table, in the biblical tradition, hospitality was focused on welcoming the stranger. In Israel, strangers and aliens were a protected class. God specifically instructed his people not to oppress them, not to exploit the foreigners in their midst. And scattered throughout the Old Testament, we find passages such as these. From Deuteronomy 10, 17, 19. For the Lord your God is God of gods and Lord of lords, the great God, mighty and awesome, who shows no partiality and accepts no bribes. He defends the cause of the fatherless and the widow and loves the alien, giving him food and clothing. And you are to love those who are aliens, for you yourselves were aliens in Egypt. And then from Leviticus 19, 33, 34. When an alien lives with you in your land, do not mistreat him. The alien living with you must be treated as one of your native born. Love him as yourself, for you were aliens in Egypt. I am the Lord your God. See, in these verses we see a common thread. God is commanding the Israelites not to oppress or mistreat the alien, the person of non-Israelite descent. Such persons were not to be denied justice or treated unequally before the law. Not only that, they were to be loved and provided for. Why? Because the Israelites themselves had been foreigners in Egypt. They themselves have been a persecuted minority. But the reason for the command goes deeper than that. It is not merely that they remember what it was like to be mistreated. It's the fact that God had reached out to them when they were strangers in Egypt, making them members of his own family. And that's the point at which these Old Testament laws begin to have, great significance for us. See, what's at issue here is the character of God. What kind of God the Israelites served and what kind of God we serve. And we serve a God who has extended hospitality to us. God sought us out. He drew us in. He rescued us. It's God who has shown his kindness to us over and over and over again. Despite of us being aliens and strangers, us being outside the promises, us being in rebellion against God. Ephesians 2:13 says, "But now in Christ Jesus, you who once were far away have been brought near through the blood of Christ. Consequently, you are no longer foreigners and aliens, but fellow citizens with God's people and members of God's household." See, the thing is, when we are hospitable, when we show kindness to outsiders, to strangers, we reflect the character of God. It talks about our witness. We reflect the character of God because that's what God does. He makes the outsider a part of his family. That's what God did for Israel in Egypt. And that's what God did for us when we were separated from him. And if we are God's children, then we will do the same. I've known people who have expressed great hospitality in churches. I've known people who have joined a church and become active members because someone in the congregation, a person they didn't know, wrote a handwritten letter to them and welcomed them to the congregation. People have joined churches because, when they first visited and their baby fussed, a woman leaned forward and said, "Don't worry, that's the way I feel about this sermon too, but, come back. Come back because they get better." And then the woman offered to walk the baby in the narthex so the visitor or the guest could listen to the sermon. We say we are a friendly church. We say that we do fine with hospitality. But sometimes the greatest strength of churches and classes and choirs is also their greatest weakness. Church members, don't get me wrong, church members love each other so much that their lives are so intertwined and their interests so interwoven that church groups become impenetrable to new people. And I bet you have not experienced that here, not here. No. Because hospitality is more than fellowship with one another. It's about opening our hearts to others and building relationships. Plain and simple. The joy of receiving God's hospitality decays and dies if it doesn't flourish in our own hospitality to others. Hospitality must be intentional, invitational, and incarnational. That is, we must always be ready to welcome and receive visitors and strangers in our midst. We must use, our elbow power to invite friends and family and neighbors to our church. And we, all of us, must engage people. And I know you introverts are sweating, thinking about it right now. But you can do it. You can do it. You would be surprised at how willing people are to engage you. Because in our, know everyone and know no one world we live in, people are really, really hungry to be known. And really hungry for conversation that goes deeper than how we think, the Cubs are going to do this season. Let me take this a step further. What if we practice radical hospitality? What if we practice radical hospitality? And by radical, I mean, drastically different from ordinary practice, outside the normal. I mean, people offering the absolute utmost of themselves, their creativity, their abilities, their energy to offer gracious invitation and reception of Christ to others. And here is a suggestion. I know this is radical, don't get me wrong. I know this is radical. But this is just a thought to help visitors, feel more welcome. What would happen if we left the last pew there empty? Oh, I know. I just lost my job. I mean, this is radical, but why do we do these radical things, Because what is the main business of us? We are in the people business. And if you don't want to embarrass visitors, you let them take the back pew. And another thing, how about when you come to the sanctuary, you fill in the center of the pew out? Now this will help you and help them. And they don't have to crawl over you. And two, if they don't crawl over you, they won't snag your nylons, right? This works for everyone. Now, I'm not going to put, a rope up in the back or tape. I'm not going to tape it up. No, I'm not going to create rules about that. No, because we shouldn't have to. This is not about rules. This is about love. This is about love. It's about extending the same grace that we have received. We don't do it because we have to. We do it because we want to. There are so many ways to offer hospitality. What if we call today or tomorrow a coworker who is struggling and maybe ate a meal with him or with her? What if we knocked on the neighbor's door with an invitation to a backyard barbecue? What if we looked around our church today for hurting people to be a blessing to? What if we call and invited someone over this evening so that we can watch March Madness and have a sandwich? Is it on? Because I don't have cable. What kind of work? Imagine what kind of work could God begin through your life if you lived this way? Brothers and sisters, the writer of Hebrews puts it in really interesting terms. Be hospitable, because by doing this, there are folks who have actually hosted angels without even knowing it. And I think that's very cool. That's very cool. I mean, I think about meeting the angels when we get to heaven, Wouldn't it be just absolutely awesome to hear one of these, angels say to us, I know you, I know you, I know you. I was in your church one Sunday, and it was really nice the way you welcomed me and made me feel at home among you. Every member here, every member of the body of Christ, you are the fruit of someone's ministry and faithfulness and hospitality. So, who is the fruit of yours?